All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. I want to welcome all the protectors who are listening and joining us. We've got Coach Brad here with us tonight. Coach Dustin is away. Listen, tonight we're going to talk about the truth about disarming weapons in a violent assault. Almost every single day I see, on some sort of social media, I see a self-defense, I'm putting air quotes for those that are just listening to this, a self-defense expert of some type, sharing the what to do. Do you know what to do if you were attacked by a baseball bat? Do you know what to do if you were attacked by a knife-wielding maniac? And listen, again, I'm just going to throw my 2 cents in. But I really encourage people as we dive into this today to let's step back and think about, again, anything is possible, but only certain things are probable. And I need everyone to understand that, right? Okay, that anything is possible. A helicopter with 30 fucking Spetsnaz soldiers could, all of a sudden hover over my house and fast rope down, and you could get rushed by Russian special forces. Is it possible? Well, yeah, it's possible. But it is so far away from fucking probable that it's not worth talking about. So in all of these so-called, self-defense experts in these videos, so much of this shit, in my opinion, is it possible? Well, it's possible. But when we're talking about a person's life being on the line or the life of their family, don't we have a duty to stay within what's probable? And I want to break this down. So we're going to dive deep on what is the actual truth about disarming weapons during a violent assault. And I think if you listen to this and you have an open mind to this, we don't come at it from a place of bias, because I'm not starting this by saying I have the answers and I have the truth, because I have no loyalty to system. I have no loyalty to art or style. I don't give a fuck. All I care about is function. So I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't have to be like, my knife training from Kali is superior to your knife work that you do in whatever. No, I don't care. I don't have a dog in the fight. All I care about is I want to be able to survive, and I want my clients to be able to survive. Okay, so we're really going to strip back a bunch of bullshit and take a look at this, and we're going to discuss this in the realm of what is probable, not what is possible. All right, so listen, that's what we're going to dive into. Back in 30 seconds. Hang with us. Hey everybody, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Greg LaBeouf, and I'm sharing insights for how I went from the victim of a brutal attempted murder to weaponizing my mind and body, mastering the tool of violence so that I can protect myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Okay, we're back. All right. So the truth about disarming weapons. Okay, now, listen, there's a lot of angles that we could come at this. I kind of did a little bit of a pre-setup, so let's just dive into this. I wrote down a few key points. And now listen, again, I just want to reiterate. I'm not going to come at this from the angle of an instructor, and I'm not going to preach. I teach this. Here's my system. Were's what I would do. Here's my strategies. I don't want to do that. I really just want to talk about this from a place where we're trying not to be influenced by bias. Let's just look at this logically, and let's connect it to what do we really know about assaults with weapons. And you say, well, what do you mean? How do we know this? We know this from studying criminality, meaning there are literally thousands and thousands of hours of CCTV footage, okay, or different recorded, moments where violent assailants with weapons violently assaulted, murdered, raped, whatever it is, but used a weapon in the commission of an attack. So we're going to look at what is. We don't have to guess with that. That's why I talked about, anything's possible, but what's probable? What is actually happening? How are they using these weapons in these offenses? So let's not guess. Let's just deal with the facts, okay? And then let's talk about the different strategies, tactics, and tools. And I will try my best to keep my personal bias that I might have, out of it. Okay, that makes sense. So here's kind of one of the first points, or let me throw a concept out there, because I was told this many years ago and explained, and I'm like, okay, now this makes sense. So let me throw this out there. When you're talking about a bad guy that has a weapon, in the course of this engagement, as things get physical, things are going to happen. And some of these things that happen can be accidental or incidental, meaning they occur not by designed intent. So they're accidental or incidental versus strategic or tactical. So meaning again, like if I have a strategy and a tactic, which we do have, like we teach strategies and tactics for defense against knives, but I'm not going to go into the specifics because we're keeping that out of it. But somebody either goes, oh, I was told this. If an attacker has a weapon, I was told here's my strategy and here's my tactics and these are the tools that I use. So now you're doing this with intent. You're training, you're practicing, you're repping, you're doing pressure testing, all this type of shit, whatever you're doing, and you're saying these are my strategies and these are my tactics. So that means that when this situation happens, when you're facing a criminal with a weapon, you have a plan, and you're trying to execute this plan. Okay, now again, nothing wrong with that, but I'm setting up the differences. Now, the other side is that you might have a plan and a strategy, but in the course of you trying to execute your plan or strategy, something happens. And it's like, it's accidental. Like it happened in the course of you executing on your plan, or it's incidental. Now, I'll throw out something specific and then Brad, I'll let you jump in with your first thoughts off this whole thing. But for example, trapping the limb that is holding the weapon. So if we have a bad guy has a knife or a machete, whatever it is, a baseball bat, he has something in his hand. And so all of a sudden, I either could, by design, so my strategy, my tactic is to shoot in. I was taught, rush in, close the distance, and trap that arm. So he has the knife in the right arm, trap that right fucking arm. Get in there and trap that arm. So now you're securing the weapon arm. So someone's teaching that as a strategy, tactic, and then they're teaching you the techniques or the tools that go with that. Or what happens is you have a different kind of goal plan, whatever. But in the development of the situation, the guy starts slashing or stabbing at you, and almost viscerally, reflexively, you come into contact with that arm. Or that arm, he swings it and the arm gets caught under your arm. Like your hands come up for what, in a reflexive manner, and all of a sudden you have an attachment to the arm. So you've trapped the arm, at least momentarily, but that wasn't what you were looking for. You weren't seeking that. It was accidental almost, or incidental, meaning it just kind of, boop, there it is. Okay. So those are very different thought processes. And I think that the first thing we need to do is at least talk a little bit about that. And then as we unpack some of the other points, that'll clarify it. But just give me your first visceral thoughts, Brad, because I know you see all the shit too. You've heard all the different schools of thought and stuff. But where do you stand, and what's your perception on, how people are talking about, the truth about dealing or disarming weapons in a violent assault?
Well, obviously I agree about the accidental, not incidental, right? That's things that we've had discussions on.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. And, even just through the conversation up to this point, and when you're originally pitched the topic for tonight, because obviously everybody knows I don't know what we're talking about until we start talking, and it made me go somewhere very specific, and it was almost like the words that came into my mind were primed or over focused, things of that nature, because now it's like, oh, if I think that in a violent assault that someone has a knife and they're going to attack me with that knife, that my objective is to disarm that person, right? If that's what I've been taught, then my mindset goes to, I need to disarm this person. I need to execute on that. And I think for me, it takes, that may not be the best strategy, tactic, you know what I mean? But because we've been told, oh, knife, disarm the knife, right? And then your mind goes there. It's like, well, that's what I have to do because he has a knife. So you get hyper-focused, you get primed to deal with that as it is, and you lose so many more strategies that are on the table because your mind's like, I got to disarm that knife. I got to trap that arm. You're trying to accomplish this now, but that may not be the best fucking thing to do, right? The best thing to do may be like, hey, there's a car right there. Get on the other side of that car. Yeah. Whatever. Like we could paint all the variables in the world, but like if your mindset automatically goes to, I got to disarm the knife, you're not going to see other things that could save you, those don't become on the table. They don't become as evident because you just get so fixated on, I got to disarm the knife,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
If I can jump in on it, because that was beautifully said, and I really want to double down on some of the things you said. The whole thing about being over focused or being primed, and you tied that beautifully into what is the goal. Now, when we talk obviously strategy and tactics, and again, I'm not talking about ours specifically. I'm just saying when people talk about that, your strategy is your overall game plan. Like, what's the overall result that you would like to achieve? And so, very clearly, you said this, and I love it because you're like, well, okay, what if I got a violent attacker in front of me? Let's just fucking make it simple. It's one guy, but it's a crazy motherfucker who has the intent to, to try to fucking murder you or your family, right? So he's got a weapon and he's fully intent on using that weapon. So what is the goal? Like, because you said it great. Like, if he's got a knife, then right away, someone with training who has had an instructor or a system or a style or whatever it is put into their head, well, if the guy's got a knife, the goal is to disarm the knife. But let's pause for just a second. Is that really the goal? Like, should that be the goal?
absolutely
Because,
not.
yeah, go ahead, Brad, sorry.
Oh, I just said absolutely not. That's
Yeah,
not
and I agree with you. Like, I don't think that should be the fucking goal either. Because, like, what if you said, like, listen, like, that is a possible goal, but wouldn't the actual goal be, like, don't get fucking murdered? Like, don't get stabbed to death. Don't get your throat slit. Don't let your family get stabbed or murdered. Now, right away, people go, well, yeah, the only way to really prevent that is so that he doesn't have that knife anymore, meaning you have to disarm it. Well, whoa. Like you said, that's the only way? Like, if that guy had a knife and I could snap my fingers and me and my family and everybody that was in jeopardy was all of a sudden in a tank, like locked securely inside of a tank, he couldn't stab us, could he? And now you're saying, well, that's possible but not probable, Greg. Okay, but I have to get your mind opened up to the fact that, listen, what would be the goal of going, well, if I could just all of a sudden put myself in a secured tank, but I'm saying the goal is what? The goal is survival. The goal is not disarm the knife. The goal is to survive. How do we maximize that? How do we survive? What are our best chances of surviving with minimal damage sustained, minimal effort, minimal training? All I'm saying is we just got to open our minds up a little bit that there are other alternatives, that the disarm is by no means, I don't think, the first one, and I think you agree because you said it. If there's a car there and you got some dipshit with a fucking machete and you put yourself on one side of the car and he's on the other side of the car, it's going to be very tough for him to stab you. And it's going to be very tough for him to get him on the same side of the car that you're on, because you can move your feet the same way he can move his feet. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. So I love that part that you really be very careful of what we're submitting to people, because if you're being trained to go, when he's got a weapon, we have to disarm that weapon. Most likely what they're doing is they're going, okay, all of our weapons training is going to be predicated off a hyper-focused fraction or like Polaroid of a violent assault. So saying, oh, your attacker's got a knife and he's already close to you and he's already thrusting it at your jugular. And so now what do we do? And you're like, well, first, how did he get that close? And B, how did he launch that attack, which is now fractions of inches from my jugular? And so now I have to block the weapon or I have to try to trap the limb. Like, we create these micro scenarios that leave no choice but to support the technique that you're teaching as the only logical and best goal. Because you're saying, no, that's all gone. You're in this fraction of a second and this is occurring and now this is the only thing that makes sense. True, right? In that situation, I'd be like, okay, yes, I agree with that. But that's not violence. How the fuck did we get here? I mean, it's Tony Blauer that says, what did we do? Is this Star Trek? Did they beam you in? Like, did the violent attacker beam himself into that position so you had no idea and all of a sudden, boom, he's there? Like, no, that's not how reality works. So I really love that you hit that, because you change one little variable in that, and then you say, so really should the guy be trying to trap the limb at this point? And if you've changed one little variable, well, no, not if that happened, they wouldn't. Then it wouldn't make sense. Oh, so there are other options. The variables are flexible. And so we do have to look at other things. So that was really, really well stated. And I just wanted to really reiterate for people, because I think that's really, really clear.
Yeah, and just one thing, thinking about where we're at in the conversation, you know, um, if your goal, like we kind of said, if your goal is you see a violent attacker with a knife, and I'm going to take that knife away from them, you 100% agreed to being into that situation. You've just given over consent. I'm going to engage with this individual. I'm gonna partake in this event. I'm gonna contribute to the narrative. All those sorts of things. When it's like, you don't have to. And I think that's kind of what we're saying.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to do this. You don't have to disarm the guy. You don't have to stay there. You don't have to you don't have to agree to go down this path the way that violent criminal thinks this is going to go down.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to consent. That's no different than somebody saying, "Let's go outside and let's fight." And you're okay. Well, let's go outside like men. Then you just agreed to that.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I think not just men, but everybody needs their chance. Like, you don't have to participate. You don't have to. Like, you could go you could leave if your ego will let you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, it's like if I think about it, if I'm going to try to disarm somebody who's wielding a knife to try to kill me and murder me, I think I'm helping them and I'm participating and I'm consenting to that engagement.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And that's the word that I was going to throw up, and then you nailed it specifically, but the word consent, right? Here's the thing. The second you consent, you take cheating off the table.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say that again so people can think about it. The second that you consent, the second you agree to anything, and remember, most consent happens subconsciously. I'm not saying consciously like you say, okay, fuck you, let's do this. It happens subconsciously. Martial arts training, right, of any kind, sport or traditional, whatever it is, one of the things they don't recognize is that the bias of art often voluntarily consents to things. Somebody puts their hands up in front of you, fuck you, man, just threatens you, fuck, I'm going to kill you. And the fact that in your training, the second there's aggression, you go into your fighting stance is a form of consent. You know what I mean? Like it activates. The second somebody grabs you and you automatically pummel back and go into your jiu-jitsu. Now you might say, well, that could be the best countermeasure. Maybe, but the point is the second they wrestled, you wrestled. What's the quickest way to get somebody to kick you?
Kick them.
Kick them. Quickest way to get someone to punch you? Punch him. The quickest way to get somebody to wrestle you or whatever is wrestle. Like, that's what happens, right? You become motor set. They punch me, I punch them. And again, yeah, good. Oh, he punched me, I'm going to double leg takedown. Okay, fine. But you get what I mean with the consent. We consent to be into this fight. So the second there is subconscious or conscious consent, cheating comes off the table for the most part, right? If you're trained that the second an attack happens, there are no rules, and your goal cannot be their goal. Like it's a completely different. You destroy their objective, not fight the man. Then okay, you're gonna come about this differently. So I like that you put that out there. Now I think just before I throw another thing up there, that the accidental or incidental, or whether you're being taught strategically and tactically, meaning with intent, we're talking about the guy's got a weapon. We're talking about the disarm. And so much like jiu-jitsu, for example, like first if you stabilize the person and then you trap the limb and then you submit. So stabilize, trap, submit is kind of the 3-step sequence, right? Position leads to submission. But position leads to like the isolation or trapping of a limb or whatever it happens to be, an appendage, and then that sets up the submission. So if we're talking about whether it's accidental or incidental or whether it's strategic and tactical by design, you're thinking he's got a weapon, I got to disarm the weapon. I got to get that weapon out of his hand or whatever it is. Then what you're talking about is, okay, well, to disarm it, to actually strip it, I first got to trap it and I've got to isolate it and get control over the limb or the body, whatever. So what we're talking about again is in the context of the situation unfolding, I might be trying to strike. I might be trying to move laterally, get off the X. I might be trying to get around that car, and this guy blitzes me, and he's so fast and so overwhelming that as he's blitzing in, and I'm trying to get off the X and put an obstruction between us. I'm trying to move around a chair, a table, a car, a tree, whatever the fuck it is. All of a sudden, as that comes in, reflexively, my arms I have to jam into him. I have to bridge into him because I'm like, I'm not going to get away. I can't get off the X. His blitz overtook me. But is happening I'm not seeking that. I'm trying to work, my goal is don't get murdered. And so I'm trying to manage the distance, manage the damage. So, but in the course of that, all of a sudden I find myself and the limb is right there. My hand is already on the limb or it's wrapped up. Now, some people might say, well, yeah, but how did you know how to wrap up the limb? Someone had to teach you that. 100% fine. Okay. How do I do a shoulder lock? Because one of the ways, if the guy's got the knife, you shoulder lock the arm or you underhook the arm, right? And, or, you have an arm drag and you've got, there's Dumog, there's a whole bunch of ways for how all of a sudden you got control of a limb. But that isn't exclusive to whether he has a knife or not. That happens in groundwork. That happens in, stand-up trapping or close stand-up ground fighting. Like there's all kinds of times where you use an arm drag or you isolate the arm or you frame, whatever it is. So sure, at some point you've seen some of these limb controls, but you haven't had a bias put into you that this is trapping the limb to exclusively lead to the disarm. So accidental, if not incidental, all of a sudden you go, fuck, I've got the limb here. And maybe when you got the limb, there's a chance to eject that weapon or a chance to strip the weapon. And so you take it. But and maybe it works. But at the end of it, you're like, yeah, well, I wasn't looking for that. That was accidental, if not incidental. And that's what we're talking about how you are open. Your overarching strategies and mindset have to be, I believe, to destroy the person's objective, not fight the man. And that's fundamental. If a guy had a knife and I was like, holy fuck, and all of a sudden, I could just take 3 steps to my left or my right or 1 step back, and now we're standing on a sheet of fucking ice. You get what I mean? And I'm a little more prepared for that than he is, and he swings and he slips, or water spilt on the concrete. Like, you could fucking take an olive oil, smash, throw oil. Like, get what I'm just saying? Like, all of a sudden the environment changes. If you were smart enough to go, well, to stab me, he needs a better secured footing. And you could destroy that objective, take his base and balance. If you had a hot coffee and you threw that in his face, and you go, just because that's going to get a reaction. Like, I'd rather throw a cup of hot coffee in his face than have to try to trap a limb to disarm a fucking knife against somebody who has the intent to stab, slash, and murder me. But you won't go for the hot coffee to the face if your brain, as like you said, the goal is it's been beat into you and trained into you that I'm going to rush in and trap that limb, secure the limb, and then I'm going to just, work the disarm.
Well, we've seen it. Obviously, we've seen people do this in different ways, but it's relevant to the conversation. Is when you see somebody moving their body, and let's say training wise, but this is something that you could see in combat as well. But like someone's training and they're moving their feet athletically, however they're doing it, but they're still doing it in a manner where you could see that they're looking for something.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we've seen it. People are trying to do something where the best way that they should be moving is to use tactical movement, maybe get around that car, maybe get around those tables, those chairs. But no, they're not moving that way, even knowing that the energy in front of them dictates it. They're moving in a way where they're like, yeah, but I'm trying to get this. Yeah, motherfucker, you're trying to get it. But the thing is that you should be doing is not trying to get that right now. You should be moving, right? So if you think about that, even in a training environment, if that comes out into a real life situation where you should move and use the environment, however, you think that you got to try and get something, you're going to move differently to set that up.
Yeah.
And that setup can be extremely detrimental.
100%. Yeah, and let's just throw this out there too, because almost every video you see where somebody I'm going mostly off the knife, because you see most videos it's against a knife attacker or a bat is typically what people see. But and it could apply to the gun or whatever, but most times you see the knife and the bat. In the situations where they go, the guy has a knife, almost everybody says, hey, your number one best bet is to run. If a guy's got a knife, run, like get the fuck out of there. Because most people just acknowledge, you don't want to be there. Like, the probability of you getting cut or stabbed and now is very high. Like, a knife reverberates real fucking fast. You know what I mean? It's not this, now you can, someone could just be statically in a singular angle, you know what I mean? Like, wah, wah, like, Friday the 13th, just trying to, whatever. But everyone says, so run. But I never see anybody practice running. And people right now, probably like you, laugh. You're laughing for a very different reason. Because you know that you actually need to practice running. Because that's what we call it tactical movement. There's tactical footwork, which is when you don't have the ability to move as much. And so you need to understand how to tactically move your body in close quarters and really bog down, proximities and stuff. And there's really good strategic and tactical ways and footwork that you can be taught that really helps against multiple opponents and all these types of things. But tactical movement is like there's an actual a professional adult league of tag. Everyone's played tag. If you've never played tag, you didn't have a childhood, and I feel sorry for you. Everyone's played tag, and you've typically played it at a park and sand tag or lava tag or whatever the fuck you want it to be. But there's a professional league of tag that adults play, and it's it's a sport. And when you watch them move, like those motherfuckers understand really good combative footwork. Imagine if you just took the very best out of this professional league of tag and these adults that are like world class, and what are they good at? They're good at avoiding. They're good at using all these obstacles and structures and knowing when to run, when to zig, when to zag, when to go high, when to go low, when to pause, let them pass you, how to like, just like in football or in hockey, there's not a forward that plays hockey that doesn't understand how to try to split the defense or how to out-deke or maneuver around the defense, because you don't have a running back that doesn't understand how to get through a defensive line in football. Like, this shit just makes sense. Yet in combat, you never see anybody practicing how to actually fucking run, how to tactically get off the X as if you were playing a professional game of tag against other adults who are also equally well trained, because we have this amazing environment, whether it's in your house, it's out in front of your house in the street, it's in a parkade. It's like this fucking exists. And sure, you can say, well, the attributes required. When you have environmental pieces like cars and different things, yes, it takes some attributes, but you know what? Nobody trains it. Bad guys are confounded by environment because they've never had to face it really. They're like, no, hey, be a man, stand here and fight. It destroys their objective.
Yeah, but Greg, if I did that, then I don't get to use my art.
Yeah, exactly. Jeez, what are you trying to do, Greg? Help me survive? That's fucking dumb. I spent all these years training so I could fucking disarm somebody. I mean, you don't see John Wick, right? Fucking running. Well, actually, you do see him do that a couple times, but you get what I mean.
But it's kind of funny because when you think about it, it's like, like I get it, yeah, run, but I don't get to do my shit that I've been training all this time for.
100%.
Like
the ego.
That's again, that's what keeps people standing there to be like, I'm gonna consent to.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because people have this thought that when they training makes them better. And then right now, again, people are going, Greg, are you stupid? Of course training makes that. Why else would you train if it didn't make you better? No. There's people that training, they think that training is what gives them the biggest edge. Like, I have training, they don't. Or even if they do have training, I'm trained better. My art is superior. I'm a superior athlete. I'm a superior person. And it's like when you weaponize, like, my training makes me better, but not in the way most people think. My training is what's given me, I'm hopeful, given me an advantage, right? But not in a direct fight. Like, my training is what's teaching me to think unconventionally. It's what's teaching me guerrilla warfare, because all things relative, I am the inferior force. That's why somebody's attacking me. Your paperboy doesn't ring your doorbell and ask you to step outside. Like, you're talking about a superior fighting force that is trying to invade your territory. And if you fight them head up, you're gonna fucking die. You're gonna lose. That's what it is. That you can't fight a war of annihilation when you are outgunned and outmanned. So tag, the actually practicing how to run. You know what's so funny? You've seen this. We've done this over the years. You take able-bodied men in their late 20s, early 30s, all really good attributes. They've played sports. For all intents and purposes, they are very close to being at their peak state in life. No ailments, no injuries, nothing that's really inhibiting them at all. And yet you take a live machete and you say, and we have them outside and we say, okay, like there's two of us, we each have like a machete in each hand, so that's 4 machetes. You stand back 10, 15 feet, so they have lots of space, lots of time. And you say, okay, we're going to come at you with these machetes. And we're going to swing only about 30%, but I'm going to swing at 30%. I'm not stopping it, so you better get the fuck out of the way. And there's all this, there's a certain amount of space. But what really is the path of least resistance for them, and what they should figure out very quickly, is that the second we start swinging the machetes and we start funneling in on them, the only and best option for them to escape is to run over a car that we have parked there. Jump up on the hood, like on the hood, climb up onto the roof, over the roof, down the trunk, and be gone. That is like, in the terms of that puzzle, that is the path of least resistance. And yet, 9 out of 10 guys will try to squeeze through a 1 foot by, a 1 foot narrow choke point between a parked car and a fence. They will try to squeeze through there. And as they're trying to squeeze through that, we are on them. And we have to stop the attack. Otherwise, they would sustain injury. So it's like, you get what I mean? And that's 9 out of 10. 1 intuitively goes, these guys are like, fuck that. That's real machetes. Fuck you. I don't know whose car this is, but I don't give a fuck. And they crawl over the car. Now, that's what we wanted them to do. And if they took a second to look, they'd see there's other footprints on the hood of that car, the roof of that car, and off the back end of that car, which should intuitively go, somebody's already done this, so if they can do it, I can do it. But the second we stop, reset the drill, and say, okay, why didn't you go over the car? And they're like, I didn't know I could do that. But why couldn't you do that? Like if your life's on the line, what can't you're playing by your bias is a social contract. Now, that's not ideally that, because that's not what we do every day. We don't go walking over fucking cars every day. So we have this unwritten, unconscious rule that tells us to go around the car or to squeeze through this narrow, tough opening, which is going to take you time to get through, versus going up and over the car. And most people go, oh, bullshit, I'd have ran over that car. No, you don't. Yeah, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. Everyone says what they would do when 9 out of 10 guys don't fucking do it. So, we'll see. You know what I mean? But even someone hearing that now is like, oh, I could do that? In a professional game of tag, you know what I mean? Just like when you train parkour, you look at the environment differently. Everything is a piece of jungle gym equipment to you. But that's not how most people walk through the environment. Parkour guys and gals walk through a neighborhood and they see everything as something they can climb, jump off of, roll through, swing to, swing off of, swing from. You get what I mean? And now if they were ever going to be attacked, especially by multiple opponents, where there's a need to have a lot of physical movement and be able to just be like, listen, you can try to catch me. You're a rhinoceros. I'm a fucking monkey. And look around yourself. We're in a playground full of trees and fucking shit I can jump off of, swing on. That rhinoceros, big and strong, is going to have a hard time spearing that monkey. The monkey's going to make him look like a fucking idiot. And it is not that hard to get good people to go, listen, you don't have to be the greatest athlete in the world. You don't have to be a parkour specialist or, a master athletic, professional tag player. You just got to open your brain up and think a bit about like tag. You know what I mean? Think about moving and using the environment, or, a little bit of those athletic, that training to be like, I can use this environment probably far more effective than most people, especially when that's not in their wheelhouse and not in their blueprint. So anyway, so in the course of that, there's accidental or incidental. We can still understand that, yes, there are moments when a disarm or a trap of the limb comes to you. I just personally don't believe that you should seek it out. And again, I'll just say that if we're just sitting here talking logically, I like that makes the most sense to me. Then rather than seeking, like, that should be your goal. He's got a knife, you should disarm him. He's got a gun, take it away from him. You know what I mean?
What kind of motor function does it take to execute something like that?
Something like, oh yeah, the disarm?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So let me just throw this in there because you actually just hit. This is one of my points. I had it down the list. But if we're going to talk again, accidental versus innovative versus strategic versus intent, then what you're talking about is experience versus inexperience and age and attributes. Right. So in a lot of these videos where I see these guys running like 1 day, 2 day seminars, or people are, whether they're in their group class or whatever it is, when they're training this, okay, the attacker's in front of you, he's got the knife down by his side, or he's got the knife up at the ready, and he goes to stab into you. And now they show them jamming in and using the forearms to jam into the weapon. You know what I mean? So, this forearm's angled this way, this forearm's angled this way. We jam into his forearm. That's the best likelihood of stopping that thrust attack or that slash attack. And then from there, we latch onto the arm. And now you've got the arm. And once you've got the arm and your body weight is on it, you're securing it, leaning into it. Now they say, like, now you should be striking and all this other shit, right? Two things though, when you see them trap the arm, they're never trapping the hand. And the guy just has to, I've seen guys where they're standing there and you can see the other hand is right beside the knife, yet they don't switch hands. And that's all the bad guy's going to do is just going to grab it with the other hand, and now he's stabbing you because you're latched onto his arm. You don't even recognize that he's fucking switched hands. Then people, because most instructors are like, you can't trap the hand because the hand's too unstable. Now he's moving his arm, and it's like grabbing a dragon by the tip of his tail. When he starts whipping his entire body around, you're never going to hold on to the tail. So and here was my bigger point with that. When they show them practicing this, or they show them teaching, they show them practicing it, the coach is always in the background or standing there yelling reminders to them over and over. No, yeah, okay, get in there, grab, okay, now start straight, now you got it straight, no, hold on to it, okay, now he transferred, get the other arm, oh, no, back up, now zone, now move. Like, if you have to, now listen, everyone needs coaching when they're inexperienced, but I'm saying if there's so many moving parts to that like, how long if you have to yell that many fucking reminders and there's that many things, like it's like you're cooking in a professional kitchen and you got 18 different dishes being cooked at the same time and they're all on full high heat. Something's going to burn, man. You know what I mean? That's a high risk, low probability strategy tactic you're trying to teach somebody. And so you have to really sit there and say, okay, how much experience does this really take for this to work? Like, how long till they're actually, even at a moderate level of functionality? It's going to take some time. What level of athlete do we need? Like, let's be honest. What level of attributes does this person have to have? And now they can build up to that, but how long is that going to take? So, I mean, at the end of the day, just like you said, do you not have to think about, the role of experience? And if you look at something and say, this takes a high level of experience, then to me, when you're talking about real world, like life and death, personal protection or defense, that's off the table. Because you got to teach the things that the least of us could do, not the best of us. Did you have something you wanted to say on that?
I just said, I'm like, it's too much risk. You got the highest stakes on the playing field.
Yeah.
And you are going to put that much weight into something that takes a high level of attributes and a low probability of actual execution to pull off.
Yeah.
Why would you assume that risk?
Yeah. Well, I see it now. I'm circling back, and I'm going to be redundant with it because, again, if we're talking without the bias, I would like an answer. Because whenever you see these guys teach it, they say, okay, watch this. I got a knife. I thrust at you or I slash at you. Take a step back, Brad. So you take a step back, and of course, what do? I swing again. Take another step back, and I swing again. And pretty soon, as I swing I take 4 steps forward, swinging and slashing and stabbing, and you take 4 steps backwards. Of course, I overwhelm you, and now you're being stabbed to death. And people go, that's why you can't move backwards. Well, yeah, but you even against a punch, you should never take 4 steps straight backwards. Like, that's not getting off the X. That's just teaching someone to back up on the X. Like that. Yeah, that's fucking dumb. That's like saying, okay, stand in front of my car. I'm going to punch the gas, and I want you to back up as fast as you can away from my car. You're going to get, and then everyone goes, see, he got run over. Okay, so get in your car and punch the gas, and I'm going to step 3 steps to my right or my left. Now, maybe you're fast enough to turn the wheel and still hit me, but I've got a far better chance, there's a far greater likelihood that I avoid you. I mean, let's look at this. That's how bullfighters survive. A bull charges. A bull's not thinking about the guy turning left or right. The bull is charging for where the motherfucker is standing. In violent situations, these people are conditioned black. They're punching and attacking and blitzing for where you're at, not for where you're going to be. You know what I mean? So the point is, you can get off the X. Again, a professional tag player. You got to think if you're like a football player, if you're a hockey player, you understand how to deke. Deking is a very basic, simple skill. You can go watch, watching my nephew play Pee-wee hockey. No, he's older now. I mean, he's not, but you go back when he's playing, mini mites and Pee-wee, and I mean, they're learning how to deke and make moves on a fucking other player, and they get around him. So a human being can be outmaneuvered. And the more intent or matter that human being is, the more linear they move. Because they commit all of their intelligence and all of their action in a singular direction, albeit super fucking fast and hard. But that's the disadvantage to the bad guy of his anger and of his loss of control, and that is the advantage to an unconventional trained person. Is they're like, I know what you're going to do. You're going to come at me like a fucking blitz, and I'm not going to back straight up for you. So, again, it's like that to me makes sense. We have a very high likelihood, there's a very high probability of getting off the X versus trying to trap the limb and go for the disarm. Now, again, most instructors would say, oh yeah, let's try that. Then they have the knife in their hand, they stand exactly 1 foot in front of me, they have the knife cocked, and they say, you tell me when and let's pressure test this. And it's like, oh, we're here already? Oh, I don't know how we got here, but okay. And then they go, and all of a sudden I say, well, yeah, geez, that was actually much harder to get off the X. But at the same time, if you did that, and you did more than just thrust at me one time, if you actually flailed and slashed and stabbed like a fucking sewing machine and were trying to puncture me, I still have a lower probability, in my opinion, of trapping your arm. Oh, I'm sorry, I also forgot. You with the knife outweigh me by 80 pounds or 100 pounds. So even when I grab you by the limb, you're fucking curling me like I'm a fucking 20-pound dumbbell. You're violent, like you're not just going to stand there statically. It's going to be like, again, you got a bull that comes fucking release the bull out of the fucking chute. And now not only do you got to ride the bull for 8 seconds, you got to try to mount the bull. While he's bucking, he comes out of the chute and the cowboy's got to try to jump on the bull and then stay on for 8 seconds. That's a whole different fucking rodeo, folks. You know what I mean? So what's the scenario? And yet martial arts and a lot of self-defense, everybody is being beamed into position. They started from like a Polaroid snapshot of like, okay, here's the critical moment where you have no choice but to trap the limb. So we're going to practice that. Okay, maybe, go ahead, practice that. But you got to remember, their practice is their prophecy. Like their practice is actually their, it's like their 10 commandments. No, this is what happens. When they have a knife, we disarm the knife and we practice this religiously and only this. And now that becomes your goal, that becomes your bias, and you start subconsciously working towards that moment happening. Because that's the only skill that I have there. Oh, yeah, but they told me to run. Oh, yeah, but you don't do what you're told to do. You do what you're conditioned to do. You do what you're trained to do. Right? And it's like, boy, that seems pretty weird. So we've talked about managing. So we talked about accidental or incidental. We've talked about whether versus the strategic versus the tactical. We've talked about, managing the distance a little bit. We talked about, like, do I go back? Do I open the gap or do I close the gap? Well, where are we at in the situation? If you saw me, if I had words with you and we're standing there, Brad, and me and you are nose to nose, and I'm telling you, I'm going to fucking cut your fucking head off, and then I turned around abruptly and walked to my car parked 15 feet away, and I popped the trunk, and I reached into the trunk, and I pulled out my machete, and I start walking back towards you, and you're still standing there, and I put nose back to nose, and then I start hacking your fucking head, and you start trying to trap the arm, I think you kind of fucked up. Like, manage the distance, manage the damage. So we're nose to nose. I turn to go walk towards my car, and you're already gone. Now, you could say, well, the guy said, you should rush in and tackle him and attack him before he got to the trunk of his car. That's an option. Or you could turn and run, and I turn around and you're gone. That's also an option. What's the better option? Well, I know that if you turn around to go get something, I believe you're obviously going to get something. Told me you're going to cut your head off. You turn to walk, so I'm assuming you're going to get a tool or an instrument to fulfill that, your declaration. And I take off and I run. That seems easier to me, because the best way to avoid the fight is to not be in the fight. So I would remove myself. Now, if for some mitigating circumstances there is no egress, then I would, I'm going to close the distance, because I'm managing the distance. I'm going to get to you before you have a chance to rearm or to arm yourself. So, it's this, but it becomes, again, remember, this is a movie clip. Fast forward, rewind, pause. What part of the movie's clip, what fraction of a second, the moment, does your training begin? What moment does your technique take place in? Not moment, what second? What fraction of a second does your technique take place in? And that's again where there's such a narrow thing of like, well, I'm going to teach you a technique, so I have to pause right here. You're queuing up the tape. You're queuing up the assault. And then saying, and from here, and play. And, so manage the distance, manage the damage. We talked trapping. Okay, no, we haven't really talked about this. Let's talk about this. Trapping versus striking. If you got a guy, and Brad, you're holding a knife, or I'm holding the knife. And you're standing in front, like we're in striking range, we're in proximity. And I have that knife. Now again, I have the knife and you see me escalating. So my verbal's deteriorating, my body language is deteriorating, everything is escalating to where you're like, oh fuck, this guy's about to jump. Like this guy's about to blitz. He's about to cross the physical threshold, what we call the point of no return. It's about to go crisis. And so you see that and it's imminent, it's right there, and all of a sudden you just start fucking, you start eye-shotting me, you start smashing me, you start like, whatever it is, I don't care, but you start striking. You just start taking base and balance with whatever strikes you're trained in, because I want to try to keep this neutral. You just start violence of action, uninterrupted violence of action against me with forward pressure, because you're like, if I take his base and balance, that is going to, right there, that is going to be the best way to mitigate his strike. The tool is only as good as the turret it's carried on. So if you destroy the turret, the tool is ineffective. So a guy that's being, losing base and balance and being barraged in an uninterrupted manner, as he's flailing backwards, his limbs are seeking balance. His arms are flailing to the side, trying to prevent himself from going ass over tea kettle. So that would be an example of striking. And so the second you start striking and take base and balance, you're like, well, yeah, if he doesn't have the turret, he can't deliver the snake. If you take the fang, the snake is much more harmless, if not completely harmless. Or you rush in and grab my limb. And so you grab the limb. And then before you can start striking, you need to secure the limb. That's not easy to do. Most people that I see that start training would be very ineffective at trapping a limb for probably 3 to 5 years of some pretty consistent, decent training. If they're at all on a little bit of the mid-age to older spectrum and they haven't done physical sports or things for a long time, they would have a very, very low probability of being able to securely trap an arm of what is most likely a young, prime crime years individual with a history of violence who will not hesitate. They don't have a style. They're not bound. They're just fucking, they're wild and they're like a fucking bull coming out of the fucking chute that's just been kicked in the fucking balls. They're flailing around at Mach 3. That's you're asking an inexperienced rider to jump on the back of a wild horse bareback, you know what I mean, with no riding experience. That's the way, at least that's what I see. And then you say, well, yeah, but then their strikes aren't going to be good. Well, their strikes are going to be, you can teach people to strike a lot easier than you can teach them to trap a limb and hold on. That's different than being on the ground and being able to use your entire, you get what I mean. So, and again, this is my perceptions of it, of what I've seen. This is my beliefs. Let me throw one more in there because I think it'll tie into this, and weapon versus weapon. So if I said that, well, accidental or incidental, I think if you're going to look, if disarms are accidental, if not incidental. The trapping of the limb, the attachment to the limb, the ability to disarm that or control that or guide that limb. I don't believe you should go in there seeking that shit. I believe that in the course of whatever you're doing, like trying to get the fuck out of there, trying to destroy that guy's objectives, not fight the guy, if all of a sudden you find yourself with that limb and it's trapped up and it's like, holy fuck, there it is, and there's an opportunity to disarm it or there's an opportunity to control him and put it, whatever it is, that just happened accidental or incidental. I believe that strongly. And the second thing is, I believe that if somebody has a weapon, your best odds of surviving that is a weapon. And how often, in none of these videos, do I see people teaching the best option? Why? Because again, people want to see martial arts. Everybody goes, what should I do? What should I do against an armed man when I have no weapon? My first question is always, why the fuck don't you have a weapon? Well, you can't always have a weapon. I always have a weapon. You always have a weapon. I always have a weapon. My weapon's like my dick. I take it everywhere. 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 Like that's just how it is. What about when you shower? My weapon is like my dick. I take it everywhere. I sit out in my hot tub. I have a weapon out there. I have weapons I always have access to a weapon. Do you not? Do you have a weapon? Like I always carry. I always have my knife. I always have tack pen. I always have a tack light. I always have a weapon. I don't leave my house and forget it. I don't do that. Because I understand that if somebody has a weapon, what's the best? You tell me, Brad. What is the best thing when somebody has a weapon?
Have a weapon.
Is that not true?
I was gonna say it's to have a dick, but not.
Yeah.
No, like legitimately, like it is to have an extent, have a weapon.
Yeah. This is my weapon. This is my gun. One is for fighting. One is for fun. Full Metal Jacket. You should revisit that movie.
But I think the one thing too is that I know from our experiences but not to get into a weapon fight.
100%. So okay, so let's expand. So I want you expand it because you brought a great point. So 100%. So this is the like I've written down. So a weapon is like if someone has a weapon, then a weapon is your best defense. Now here's the thing. I've got a knife. What's your best? Now again, where are we in the scene? Like all of a sudden, do we fast forward to a critical spot where the only the best thing you could have is a knife as well, or so I have a knife or I have a machete. What kind of weapon could be good for you?
Fucking snow brush.
Okay, snow brush. What else?
As a knife could be good.
Okay, what else?
A stick.
A stick.
A rock.
A garbage can, a chair,
hat,
a bar stool, a hat rack, a pool cue, a pool table, a fucking car, a series of brushes or hedges, a fucking crowd of other people. I mean, all of these things are weapons. You know how many guys know security guards that, in the States, there's a guy we trained with, and he had a guy come in. We were working on weapon stuff, and he said, what do you do if someone came in the mall and was attacking customers with a fucking knife or a machete or something like that? And of course, they're trying to think disarms, and we want to learn disarms and stuff. And it's like, no, the first thing Paul does is he gives grab a Rubbermaid. Go, see my garbage can down at the end of my driveway? Go grab that. The guy's like, what? Like, it ain't fucking, I'm not your trash man. And he's like, and Paul grabs a machete. And, the guy picks up the Rubbermaid and he goes, okay. And then Paul starts fucking slashing at the guy. And the guy intuitively, with no training, what the fuck you doing, man? And what did he do? He didn't swing the garbage can at him and try to smash him with it like WWE. He put the can between his body and the machete wielding lunatic. And guess what? As he's moving around and Paul's slashing, the guy was avoiding the slashes. And then all of a sudden, as Paul winds up and slashes too big, the guy's, Paul taught him this part, but then all of a sudden, as the guy's winding up and hitting and stuff like that, all of a sudden the guy submarines Paul at the knees with the fucking garbage can, and then tackles him, closes the distance, and takes it down. A month and a half or 2 months later, guess what? A fucking guy with a machete comes into the mall and starts hacking people, like just taking singular slashes at people. And all the security is running around and people don't know what to do. And one guy's trying to get close enough to grab the guy or pepper spray the guy, and that guy gets slashed. Guess what this guy does? He didn't run to the scene first. He ran to the staff room and grabbed the fucking garbage can, dumped all the fucking garbage out, and ran to this guy. He stayed in front. He put himself between this machete-wielding motherfucker and everywhere that guy turned, he put himself in front of him. And the rest of the security starts, like, of course, everybody's running and they're getting people out of the mall. And every direction this guy moved, this guy stayed in front of him. And what do you think happened? For about 15 seconds, the guy with the machete tried to slash the security guard holding the garbage can. Tried it for about 15 seconds. Guess what happened at the end of 15 seconds?
He wanted to go somewhere else.
Yeah, he got frustrated. He stopped trying to slash him and he started trying to run around him to be able to get to other people. This guy would just run and get back in front of him. And the guy would try to run a different direction and this guy would run and get in front of him. You know what I mean? And he did this for the 10 or 12 minutes it took for police to show up and get there. And at the end of it, the guy was just standing there fucking out of breath, frustrated. The police tased him, take them down, and that was the end of it. A Rubbermaid garbage can saved him. A weapon versus a weapon is your best equalizer. But again, here's the bias. If when I said weapon versus weapon, your brain went, oh, he's got a knife, I got a knife. He's got a gun, I got a gun. He's got a machete, I got a machete. You are classically and traditionally trained. You're not unconventional, you're conventional. You're not special forces, you're regular forces. And when you're talking about protecting yourself and your family, you need to be special forces, not regular forces. Special forces are unconventional warriors. They think fucking different. They plan different. Their tactics are different. They operate different. It's a completely different fucking game. And that's what, people got to wake the fuck up. You're seeing all these self-defense videos and it's people teaching regular forces. And you know what? There's validity to that for regular force type encounters, which is typically one-on-one fights. It's typically them saying, oh, you guy's got a knife, I'll teach you how to fight a man with a knife. Can you show me how to do it empty hands? Well, I can, and yes, you need to know that. But why the fuck are you empty hands? Well, I almost never carry a knife. I only carry my knife sometimes. I only carry my tack light sometimes. I've never trained to pick up a garbage can. They've told me maybe about that. I heard a story about that, but I've never trained that. I don't understand how to use a table. I don't like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, holy fuck, man. Like you can't think that way. Because look at the tack light. How great is a fucking tack light? 1,000 looms, 2,000 looms, blinding someone with one press of a button. And that does not have to be in a pitch black, dark room or night. The fucking bezeled edges and the guy tries to bridge close and you fracture his fucking skull with a tenth of the fucking effort. A 68-year-old senior citizen with a tack light in his hand understand a little bit about how to fucking punya strike and move his body the tiniest little bit, and he's fucking fracturing people and fucking people up. Not to mention that in his other hand, he's got his little tiny Swiss Army knife and he's fucking stabbing the guy in the kidney at the same fucking time. Like, again, if you had somebody with a disability, teach them a weapon. But right away, mismatched weapons. Not matched weapons, mismatched weapons. There's a whole podcast I'd like to do on this, but if you're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I don't want to Jiu-Jitsu fight you. If you're a world-class boxer and I'm a semi-pro boxer, I don't want to box you. If I'm a world-class Thai boxer and you're a pretty good Thai boxer, I still don't want to Thai box you. Don't punch a puncher, don't kick a kicker, don't wrestle a wrestler, don't trap a trapper. Why is that? Because those are matched weapons. And when you match up with somebody, you consent to fight attribute to attribute, skill to skill, style to style, technique to technique, right? You mismatch. What right now? Jiu-Jitsu is exploding. What if you got some badass motherfucker? I don't mean badass as in tough. I mean some evil motherfucker who takes probably a very moderate to low-level skill of jiu-jitsu because he's not disciplined enough to actually dedicate his life to that art. But he knows enough for how to fucking bend an elbow backwards or how to take your foot and put it in your fucking mouth and break and blow your fucking knee joints out. He understands enough how to fucking choke you the fuck out and then fucking ass rape you while you're lying there unconscious and helpless. I mean, how much jiu-jitsu skill does it take to destroy a fucking limb, which is grievous bodily harm? And while you're lying there incapacitated, how hard would it be for him to murder you? Well, it wouldn't be very hard. So what's the counter to jiu-jitsu? It's not jiu-jitsu. You should know jiu-jitsu, but it's not jiu-jitsu. That's not the path of least resistance. The counter to jiu-jitsu, as it grows and you get more likely that bad people understand jiu-jitsu and how to inflict serious bodily harm or death with it, is a good solid knife. Jiu-jitsu happens in close quarters. Knife work happens in close quarters. A guy tries to trap up your limbs, and people go, oh yeah, but I could trap the knife hand, I could do this and that, and I could also stab you and slice your throat before you know it. I'll give you a little example of this, right? A guy that I know, black belt, actually a first-degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, and we're messing around and we're rolling. I am not a black belt in jiu-jitsu, even though I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 1993, 1994, right? I don't give a fuck about the belts. I don't prescribe to it. I don't care. I roll because I want to learn how to actually be able to, defend myself on the ground. So I've been rolling but he is a first-degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. So we're messing around. He's showing me this X guard, and he's underneath me, and he's doing all this fancy shit. And sure enough, he spreads my legs out. He flops down. He's got my legs separate. He's in a position where he could do probably 106 ankle locks, but he's lying right beside me. But unbeknownst to him, I still have my blade on me. Like, I'm not in a gi. Right, I'm in my street clothes. We were doing a seminar. We were messing at the end of it, so I'm dressed to go out in the street. I got my knife on me, so I took my knife out. Now I kept it in the sheath. I didn't unsheath it, but I got the knife, and as he's there, and I got this, and I got this, he feels something against his throat, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And I just drag it across his throat. Of course, in the sheath, lightly, playfully, in control. People are gonna like, this guy's a psychotic. But he's standing, I'm doing that. Next thing you know, it's into his kidneys, it's into the base of his neck, it's into his fucking groin, it's up under his armpit. And he's standing there, and it took him almost 60 seconds to process what the fuck was happening. And I share that because do you understand the contrast? Now, I have jiu-jitsu skill set. I know some of the counters to what he was doing. But I didn't go jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu. I didn't match weapons. I mismatched. And what I'm saying is the whole thing of him going as jiu-jitsu. If I would have taken my knife out and said, okay, Trev, let's fucking roll with the knife. I got the knife, you got jiu-jitsu. Of course he's going to go in and he's going to try to isolate the limb. He's going to go, I'm going to try to trap the limb. Now that's not as easy as as it sounds maybe. But a guy that's black belt and got really good skill with the pre-knowledge that the knife is there will have a higher probability of trapping the arm and maybe disarming it or at least isolating it to where I can't stab, I can't switch hands, and he neutralizes that effectively. The difference is when you don't start from a place of pre-knowledge, he knows me. He's known me for fucking 3-4 decades, this guy. Always armed. But he didn't remember. So what chance does somebody you have who doesn't know me of predicting that I have the counter to jiu-jitsu? And again, right away, people go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I'm not talking about a fight, folks. I'm not talking about anti-social aggression. I'm talking about asocial violence. I'm 52 years old. I'm not getting in fights. My ego's not what it was when I was in my 20s. I'm not worried about some guy, calling me a name and I'm like, oh my God. You know what I'm saying? Like it's very, very different as you get older. I'm just not worried about that stuff because I'm okay. I can walk away from that stuff. So, so now we've got weapon versus weapon, but you got to understand mismatch. I don't know. Anything off that side of it, Brad?
No, not on that side. No, I think we pretty much covered it.
Okay, so let's wrap it up then. We're already about an hour into this, but so what are the final thoughts and conclusions for me? Listen, you got to learn a lot of stuff, right? And some of the stuff that you learn is not going to be very useful to you until and unless you dedicate a lot of years and hours to it. I believe that specifically looking to trap a limb of a violent maniac who's bigger, stronger than you, who has the intent, who loses control or commits to fucking trying to murder you, that arm, that knife, that pipe, that bat is going to be pumping and flailing, and it is a very tough thing to go driving in there and trying to trap, isolate, and control this limb. I believe that attachment will happen accidentally or incidentally, and if it does, you should know what the fuck to do with it, because there is opportunity within that. But that's my belief. I believe that striking, manage the distance, getting the fuck out of there, understanding actually how to tactical movement, how to run, how to jump, how to crawl, how to do all that like a professional fucking tag player, how to use the environment, greatest ally or greatest enemy, but how to fucking get the fuck out of there. Your goal is not to disarm. Your goal is to not get fucking murdered. You might have family there and say, well, what about my wife? And what about my fucking kids? Well, if you go to move and he's like, fuck that guy. That guy's jackrabbiting. I can't catch that guy. And he goes to get, your kids should know how to fucking run. Your kids should know how to move. I chase my kids around with sticks and machetes all the fucking time, man, because it's just tag to them. It's a fucking game to them, but it's manage the distance, manage the damage, kids. On the way home, if some guy's approaching my kid's not going to keep walking on the fucking, designated fucking path and sidewalk and try to walk a little quicker. You're not going to outrun an adult most times, depending on the age of the child, depending on the age of the adult. You're probably not going to outrun the motherfucker, but I bet you can out-tag that bitch. I bet most adults can't run through bushes and up over fucking obstacles and jump fences and climb things and do that shit as well as you can. And you know what I mean? So I believe that, manage the distance, manage the damage, open up your fucking mind to that. Okay? It's not just a matter of back up or go in. Don't think of it linear like that. Trapping versus striking. I believe striking is superior to trapping. Trapping is incidental, if not accidental. And here's the thing. I'm going to add a caveat. I believe striking with a mismatched weapon is far fucking better. My daughter understands how to use a tack pen, how to use a tack light. That guy A typically is never going to see that fucking coming. And instead of trying to trap up that limb at fucking 90 pounds and trying to hold on to the limb of a fucking adult, a tack pen through his eye, or a fucking, an unexpected, shot from a tack light, or fucking, raking his fucking, raking at him and putting pressure, whatever it is, that, so striking with a weapon, I believe, is better. Okay, because I believe it's that's a better strategic or tactical start point, but you can't be married to it, obviously. And then again, the whole idea of experience versus inexperience, and age and attributes. You're creating, like, we're in a very dangerous part of the movie when you have a violent predatory criminal with a weapon with full intent of fucking murdering you. All of these things are not great options. Like, let's just accept the realities of it. You got a fucking lunatic who has no fucking psychic hindrance about fucking filling you full of holes. Case in point, that psychotic motherfucker, repeat violent offender, that murdered, stabbed to death the mother and daughter right outside a school here in our own city, in a neighborhood not too far from here, and just blitzed, attacked them. Like, it's a fucked up scenario to begin with. So, we have to, but that has to be the thing. That's the reality. It's hard. It's dangerous. But what gives us the highest probability, lowest risk, highest probability of success? All things being equal, I just don't agree with what I'm seeing every day of teaching people to trap the limb. It's again, they're teaching that as this is your only solution and only and best solution. I think it's too micro focused. I think they're fast forwarding a violent assault to a very specific moment, hitting pause and starting all of their training from that dire moment. And in the context of that moment, what they're talking about has the validity, but you're creating the context instead of going, hey, listen, there's a lot more opportunities when you look at the whole scene. Violence, bad guys don't just beam into this range on you. That is where your precognitive, your awareness, all of these other skill sets come to play. But those are what actually increase your odds and dramatically decrease that's the high probability, low risk stuff. Yet we don't want to teach that. We want to teach the John Wick moment. So anyways, that's kind of my points off this conversation tonight. I don't know what you want to add or your final thoughts on it.
Yeah, just, I think we just have to be real. See it for what it is. See it for exactly the conversation that we're having. You know, in all reality, you know, when people are learning to disarm a weapon, they're doing it with fine motor skills
Yeah.
because they're training.
Yeah.
But the to be real is when you're in a combative situation, when you're under combat stress, when you're in violence, you don't operate with fine motor skills. You operate with complex motor skills or even a high gross motor skill.
Yeah.
So that's fact. You know, like
Yeah.
if you're trying to do something that is super highly skilled to execute, fuck. You know what type of human being you have to be to bring those attributes and skill sets with you when you're under all the stresses of combat?
Yeah.
Like, we've been doing this long enough, Greg. We know that the years there's very, very, very few people that operate that way.
Yeah.
And definitely not the everyday Joe that wants to learn how to do this.
100%.
So it's like we just have to be real. Like, this is like, just stop the fucking bullshit, people. Like, just really take a step back and be like, oh yeah, you know, and it doesn't really make sense to do that. You know, it's my final thought.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well said, well summed up. I agree 100%. And hope we added some value to some people tonight. So, hey, thanks a lot for joining us. Again, every Thursday we go live, 7:30. If you care to join us live, you can either watch us on Facebook, Awaken the Protector Within, or YouTube. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, Awaken the Protector Within. And yeah, every Thursday, 7:30, join us live. If not, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, wherever you download your favorite podcasts, iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever else. And again, the only ask we have, our whole mission is to help weaponize good men so that you never have to suffer the shame of failing to protect yourself and your family from violent criminal assault. It's devastating. Remember, after is often too late, right? It's whether even if you're blessed to physically survive, the psychological trauma, emotional trauma is fucking devastating. So our only ask is that you help us spread the message. We're growing everything organically. We're not looking for mass following. We're looking for the right following, the right type of like-minded people who understand and take and accept responsibility for their life, liberty, freedom, and security. So please comment if you can. If you feel we're worth it, a 5-star rating. You have no idea how much that helps us reach other great men and warriors, protect ours, such as yourself. So that is it for everybody. That is it. Brad, thank you so much. Always your time, your experience. I appreciate it. And Dustin will hopefully be back with us next week. And we will see everybody then. So that's it, everybody. Until next time, please stay safe, stay weaponized. Chat again soon, everybody.